god, Thor looks so sick. His swing is gonna be insane. Oh my god, look at that stance. This is gonna be awesome. Wait, what? Oh my fuck. Netflix original anime. They're either a hit or a miss. Record of Ragnarok is a miss. Now, let me explain. I don't think Record of Ragnarok as a story is bad. It's certainly not great or breaking any ground, but the source material is there, and it's honestly not half bad in manga format. But oh my god, Netflix did this series so dirty. The pacing of the Record of Ragnarok anime can best be described as when Goku is building up his spirit bomb. It's tedious, and you just want it to be over already. The only okay episode is the first, and even that's a stretch. There's a ton of characters, and the first episode is where most of them get introduced, so it can be a bit overwhelming when they're just spouting names and relaying info at you. But on top of this already overwhelming experience, the subtitles are messed up, leading you to be confused about who is who and why these people even matter. Some sentences just straight up wouldn't be translated, so there's long periods of 10 to 15 seconds of dialogue that the viewer isn't seeing. When you're trying to introduce the viewer to 10 plus characters in one episode, this mistake is unforgivable. I don't know how consistent of an issue this is, but it happened to me during my watch, and it sucks that it even occurs. The worst part is that I didn't even watch it illegally. This is straight from Netflix, from the original source! Netflix original anime, yay. You would expect there to be some standard of quality, but here we are! So you might be asking yourself now, how is this the episode that's deemed to be okay when it has these glaring issues? I'm glad you asked. Because it doesn't get interrupted 20 times for a backstory dump in the middle of the action sequences. Let me explain. The show only adapted 20 chapters of the manga, which, granted, was a big chunk of what was out at the moment. It's very clear they wanted to give every part, every fight, every crumb of story its due diligence. But when you break it down and give 2 seconds of critical thinking, all the show really is fighting, talking about fighting, and Aphrodite's big ass. Anyways, you would think that it would be a pretty seamless transition because there isn't much going on here, right? The problem is how they formatted these episodes. They'll stop in the middle of a crazy action sequence, i.e. Thor setting up to swing Mjolnir down, so they can give a multi-minute backstory that could have been put literally anywhere else. I understand what they were going for. They wanted to be faithful to the manga, and maybe even add to the lore a bit, but they just did too much. They wanted to milk every bit of story, every inkling of plot from those 20 chapters. But the way they went about it just comes off as pretentious. How much did they realistically want to get out of these? One Punch Man Season 1, another 12-episode season, adapted 41 chapters, which is over double what Record of Ragnarok covered, and still managed to be a better watch with more cohesion. There needs to be at least a payoff for getting narrative spewed at you, especially when it's actively taking away from what's occurring before it. Showing us what we were about to see isn't good enough. The way the manga does backstory is showcasing a couple panels or pages interspersed with the fighting, or as a transition into a new chapter, so it flows and makes you care about the characters. They serve to give you a deeper understanding of who's involved in the story without taking anything away from the current scene. Now, I counted 10 times where they straight up cut away from the fight that's going on to give us backstory. And I was being generous with what I considered a cutaway. I'm sure there's many, many more. Sometimes it felt okay, most of the time it didn't. Some of the more egregious samples are in episode 2 where they stopped in the middle of Thor's swing for 6 minutes, all to explain how Thor beat some giants. Basically, to tell us how strong Thor is. The god, Thor. The guy they displayed with muscles on his muscles carrying around a giant hammer. Yeah, it really needed to be broken down in the middle of a fight how strong this guy is and how he's bored that no one else measures up. This same backstory is used to open chapter 2.5 in the manga, so it's used as a transition It doesn't feel out of place when used as a transition. When you slap something like that in the middle of a 20-minute long episode, of course it's gonna break up the flow. And then there's the 3-minute backstory scene in the middle of episode 4 where they monologue about how Lu Bu has a special spear move. 3 straight minutes of talking and swinging a spear around versus 5 pages just feels insane when you're watching it. For me, that difference felt eternal. It truly is an awful experience to sit down and watch this show through. They ruin the flow of what should have been simple scenes for this ridiculous, unnecessary, out of place backstory. It feels like the studio was nervous that they didn't have enough material to adapt, so they felt the need to stretch these little bits and pieces into the majority of the content that we see. But this choice only served to hinder the viewer's enjoyment. It feels like you have to trudge through these parts just to get to the good stuff. But that's the catch. There is no good stuff. They're so focused on shoving this exposition down your throat that you barely even get any of what you came there for. It's a show where you'll sigh every time you hear the narrator's voice, because you just know you're in for another dump of exposition, made worse by the fact that it's probably in the middle of a fight. It feels like the characters can't move without the narrator chiming in and talking about how Zeus used to wipe his ass 200,000 years ago and how that's a big plot point for some reason. I'm just saying, I didn't get bullied for watching Naruto in the early 2000s just to have adaptations like this come out. I was in the trenches. For this? Nah. I know they could have done this better, and it should have been done better. The same studio that produced Record of Ragnarok also produced episodes 8 to 10 of Hellsing Ultimate. So they're capable of putting out quality work, but Record of Ragnarok is simply a modern-day flop. That's the only way I can put it. What minuscule amount of depth that there was supposed to be in the story was lost in this adaptation, and was instead replaced with superficial additions to pad out the length of the episodes. I don't know how they wrecked it this bad, but they did. It's like a husk of a story. There's things happening and people talking, but none of it matters. Who cares? Despite the plot being that the world could literally end, that the fate of the world rests on these fights, it feels like there's no weight to anything that's happening. Whereas in the manga, these things get conveyed like they matter. You get a feel for who the characters are and what they stand for. I don't even know if I'd call the manga good on its own. The anime just makes it seem amazing by comparison. But is it even good? I couldn't tell you. It definitely has had its moments, but I don't know if I'd call it a good series. It's a story that's only there so you can watch historical figures fight gods. Nothing more, nothing less. Expecting anything more than some cool fights and interesting character design seems like setting yourself up for an overwhelming disappointment. But even those expectations aren't met with a viewing of the anime. 11 out of 10, soundtrack was good. Hey everyone, I just want to say thank you if you made it this far in the video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Think I'm wrong? Then leave a comment down below telling me why. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this show. Thanks again and have a great day.